Richard Syrett show on Sauga 960 AM, which is heard across the GTA weekday afternoons from 4 to 6 p.m. and around the world online. Well, the New Blue Party is, as the name implies, very new, brand new, in fact, entering its first provincial election. The party is running candidates in all 124 ridings across the province. Expectations, no doubt, running high with supporters, members, candidates, many watching tonight across all of the New Blue Party's digital platforms, including YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And so, without further ado, it's my great pleasure to begin or to be with you tonight and to be joined in conversation with New Blue leader Jim Karahalios. Jim, welcome.
It's great to be live. My first New Blue live stream. I've gone live on other platforms, and it's always tough to follow you, Richard. You're such a professional, and we're going to do our best here. Usually, you've interviewed me for a few minutes, and I got to pack it all in on the radio. But now we're doing an extended hour-long session here on the eve of the election tomorrow, and our first election campaign, our first voting day, the culmination of our first campaign tomorrow. So, Richard, thank you very much for taking the time out of your day. I know you've got your regular shows, and this is outside of those regular hours. So thank you for taking the time to talk to me about our first campaign.
And we should point out that the chat is open, so we can field some questions and comments from people that are watching the live stream tonight. So how do you, Jim, as a leader of a brand new political party, measure success? So after the election results come in tomorrow night, how are you going to measure whether you've been successful or not?
I will tell you, one of our candidates in Mississauga, Amir, posted something 7 minutes ago, and he said this: every candidate, volunteer, and supporter has made history. We have created a movement that will continue to grow in the coming years. Your courage and determination has inspired something special. We couldn't be more proud. Tomorrow, the New Blue Party makes history. I don't think I could say it any better than Amir said it, one of our great candidates. And we made history when we were the first party in this election campaign to register 124 candidates, a full slate. And one of the candidates had to withdraw their campaign with a week to go because their employer pressured them. But in every single riding in Ontario, when millions of people go to vote tomorrow, they're going to see something called the New Blue Party of Ontario. And hopefully most of them have already heard of it or seen it, with the lawn signs that have been put in place, with the canvassing that our candidates have been doing. And we've been focused on, Richard, we had that conference, our training conference a couple months ago, over 700 attendees, and we had a campaign training, and we focused, and I'm so thrilled to say that our candidates took it seriously, a grassroots initiative, because we knew we weren't going to get easy coverage. We knew there was no shortcut and there was no elevator to get us off the floor where we're starting. And it was going to be step by step, and it's going to continue to be step by step after June 2nd. And our candidates engaged in a grassroots campaign. We had lawn signs going up as soon as the campaign was called on the first day across Ontario. We had canvassing efforts, which is the best way to get the word out. And we have made history. I do not believe outside of the big two, if you were going to call them that, although they act small these days, the PCs and the Liberals, there's ever been a party in Ontario's history that in their first election campaign ran a full slate, at least not in a modern day history where we've had over 100 seats. And there's only been two parties in the last 70 years outside of the PCs, Liberals, and NDP to win a seat in the legislature. And the Greens were that second party after 70 years. They did it in 2018. But it took them over 30 years to get that seat. And being a Green party is a global brand, as you know, Richard. There are Green parties all around the world, overseas, south of the border. And so they have a global brand, and it still took them over 30 years to get their first seat. So I know whatever the result tomorrow, it's going to be historic, because there's not going to be evidence in recent memory, and probably not history, where a party has been created in between election cycles and in their first election campaign, ran that many candidates, and is going to get as many votes as we're going to get tomorrow. So I feel like we've succeeded with our objectives, and we will continue to succeed if we continue to challenge the left, balance the narrative, and change the course.
But what do you say to voters, Jim? They're familiar with the New Blue Party's platform, the new blueprint. They might be in agreement with most of it or all of it, but they might be sitting back tonight telling themselves, all right, let's be practical. The New Blue Party isn't going to form the government. You're not going to form the opposition. Worst case scenario, maybe you won't win any seats. Why bother to vote? What do you tell them?
It's concerning, that kind of mentality, but understandable. I mean, you've seen the last 4 years, the government of Ontario and the federal government, Justin Trudeau and Doug Ford, the PCs and the Liberals, are on the same page. They're the same team. Different colors. It's the same team. And many, many Ontarians are just starting to notice that they're playing from the same playbook. And it's easy to lose hope and to say it's not going to make a difference. I've seen people who, for over a year, almost 2 years, on social media criticize Doug Ford for his economic policy, fiscal policy, social policy, democratic policy, and on lockdowns and mandates. And they've recently posted that they're voting for him again. And they're the same few people who will attack the rest of the Ontario public for not being as quote unquote educated on politics as they are. And they're voting for Doug Ford again. These are just a few handful of people that I know. I'm not going to name them. And they've been following the ins and outs of what's been going on in the PC party for years. And they were the most vocal on social media criticizing Doug Ford and the PCs because they often went first before Justin Trudeau on lockdowns and mandates. So it's understandable. But Richard, I've been saying this wherever I've been going town to town. We did a 4-stop tour up to Sudbury and back on the same day. We went out to Stormont, Dundas, South Glengarry, Prescott, Russell a few days ago and back. We went to Essex and with a stop in St. Thomas and back in the same day. And I said what I'm going to say to you. There are many, many reasons for us to stop. The deck is stacked against you. The political parties have the taxpayer money. The media won't cover you. They'll break their own rules to get you in the debate. The international bodies have too much influence and they want to do over with local democracy. The municipal politicians are creating laws to ban election signs from going up. There's one good reason, though, to keep going. Because if we stop, things will get worse a whole lot faster.
If New Blue doesn't win any seats tomorrow night, how much responsibility do you as the leader have for those results?
The results are up to the voters. And we talked about this in our conference and training. And our team has been very, very proud of what they're doing. And we all know that we are up against a couple of brands that are 100 years old. And there are people in Ontario that vote out of habit for PC and Liberal, and breaking those habits will take time. And we have not hidden from the enormity of the challenge that we had here in the last year and a half. And on top of that, you talk about everything that was thrown against us, distraction parties, other politicians coming out saying they were creating parties, politicians who voted with Doug Ford on lockdowns, on critical race theory, later followed Belinda's lead to take principled positions, but for reasons that weren't so principled and would later come out and attack us in whisper campaigns. If you stack all that up and line that up, all the odds that were thrown against us, not just the last 6 years, but the last year, because really we were up and running at full steam in the fall. I had a serious health issue. And we were able to get 124 candidates on the ballot in every single riding. We were able to put together a party of thousands of members and donors and a grassroots effort with lawn signs and canvassing going on, and a party platform that the more people find out about it, the more enthusiastic they get. I challenge you to find me someone else in Ontario politics who could have put that together in a year and a half.
You know, there'll be Monday morning quarterbacks the day after the election, the morning after, who will say, Jim, you should have struck a deal with Derek Sloan and the Ontario Party. You should have cooperated. Maybe things would have turned out differently. What do you say to those Monday morning quarterbacks?
They're not Monday morning quarterbacks. They're PC apologists. So let's give the proper phrase here. There have been those PC apologists for weeks. In fact, they've been around for years, and it's the same script that they've been running since I started the Axe the Carbon Tax campaign in 2017. Have you noticed Pierre Poilievre's running around now, Axe the Carbon Tax? I'm flattered you finally caught up. Since we were calling out voter fraud, since Belinda stood up against critical race theory, since Belinda stood up against Doug Ford's lockdown bill, and it's the same script that they've been using. If we succumb to the pressures over the last year and a half to strike a deal, as you say, which would have included canceling half of our candidates so that Derek Sloan could decide for 4 months that he was going to be in provincial politics, tomorrow you would not have seen one political party developing with a candidate in every riding. And can you imagine what a shame that would have been in our first election campaign to have only 60 or 70 ridings or 80 at the most where a New Blue candidate was there? And imagine the impact on our team that would have had if after months and months or a year of developing this party and a training conference and having 110 candidates, and we were interviewing the final 12 and we had 2 spots to go, and to turn around and tell a bunch of our own candidates, sorry, you're canceled. We're going to cancel you, just like the cancel culture of the PCs, because we struck a secret deal with Derek Sloan and the PC operatives behind him that are trying to hurt us. It would have been devastating for the long-term success of the New Blue Party of Ontario. It would have slowed down our growth. And most importantly, going into this election day tomorrow, you would not have seen a New Blue Party candidate in every single riding. Millions of people would not have seen New Blue as an option on their ballot. And we would not be on the mark and set up for after June 2nd for the future.
All right. So I get that. No regrets with regards to how New Blue and dealt with the Ontario Party. But aside from that, did you make any mistakes in this campaign? Would you do things differently next time?
Yes, I probably should have called out the nefariousness of Derek Sloan in 2020. I shouldn't have kept quiet for 2 years thinking that those PC operatives would stop their nefarious behavior. And I was too late. I finally talked about it in January. And I thought I thought that some people would take the high road and not continue to help the establishment in the way they like to do. So that's something that I'll have to think about. But I think we've always made it clear to our members and our supporters and our candidates, and I've been saying it, and Belinda's reminded me to make sure I keep saying it at every stop. We're going to continue to stick with our values and principles and stick with our supporters because they have stuck behind us for years, despite the lawsuits that were thrown against us, the rigged votes, despite them kicking us out of and exiling us and fellow PC party members, despite everything they throw against us. our supporters and our members and our donors have stuck with us, and we're going to do our best to continue to keep moving forward, and we will stick with them.
On the eve of the election, City TV News produced this piece on the New Blue Party, and they included the Ontario Party. The reporter referred to your party and Derek's party as fringe parties. And then a political science professor who was featured in the story came on and sort of corrected the reporter and referred to New Blue in Ontario as splinter parties. Are either of those labels fair or accurate in describing New Blue?
Well, it just shows you the establishment media doesn't even have their own, that they don't even follow their own standards anymore. I mean, City News pretended like we didn't exist for the whole campaign outside of a brief 5 seconds I think they put me on when CTV and Global broke their own rules at the leaders debate. And the rules were 124 candidates. And if you have a sitting MPP, you get to participate in the debate. And they broke their own rules to exclude New Blue. And none of the establishment media wanted to talk to us. I spoke at the beginning of the campaign to someone from City that was covering the Ontario campaign, and they didn't write anything. I didn't hear back. CTV News did an interview with me. They haven't aired it, which that was pretty funny. You do an interview with someone and you don't air it. But we knew that this was why the PC operatives behind Derek Sloan were getting him into provincial politics. Because, and on the last day of registration on May 12th, which was like a week and a half after we already registered 124 candidates, Derek and his team and that individual behind Derek, Mike Thiessen, were running around trying to get candidates as paper candidates registered at the last minute in different ridings. And most of Derek's candidates haven't done anything. They don't have lawn signs. They haven't canvassed. They haven't done anything. But why they did that, why they set that up, their first ploy or tactic was to get us to cancel a bunch of our candidates, which we already discussed, and create confusion amongst the activists, volunteers, and donors that were supporting New Blue from the beginning. When that didn't work, and our board said, we know what tricks these are because we've seen them before, their next move was to table or register a bunch of paper candidates who weren't going to do anything, because that gave the PC party the opportunity and their operatives in the back to talk to the establishment media and say, every time you're going to write something about the New Blue, also comment and insert something about this party that has no members, which is Derek Sloan's party. No members, not a full slate, not campaigning outside of about a handful of ridings, and whose only determination or objective was to hurt the New Blue Party in this campaign. And we've seen a couple articles like that. Every time they mention the New Blue Party, they skip over our history. They skip over why the party is necessary and how we worked diligently to work from the inside. They skip over the fact that Belinda was the first to vote against Doug Ford's lockdown bill, the retribution that we've had to face. They skip all of that to just say, oh yeah, and there's this other party, and it's just like the New Blue Party. We're not similar parties. They don't have any party members. They were slapped together 4 months ago with a bunch of paper candidates and two objectives: to try to hurt the New Blue, slow us down, and help the PCs, and to raise a bunch of money, because Derek's been really clear about that. And they don't talk about, and they haven't been speaking about, 75% of the things we talk about. They don't talk about getting rid of the taxpayer subsidy of the establishment political parties. They don't talk about the Ontario PCs giving the Toronto Star an online gambling license. They don't talk about wind turbines and taking them down to reduce electricity rates. And when they talk about critical race theory, it's Rick Nichols, their one MPP, voting in favor of critical race theory, and then following Belinda's lead, who voted against it. They didn't promote Belinda's stopwoke.ca petition and Rick Nichols, despite the fact that Belinda was a very good colleague to him when they were inside the PC caucus and outside, he's never had anything good to say about Belinda. And in fact, they've attacked Belinda the one time she wasn't at a vote in the evening because Rick Nichols got tipped off by the PCs and they made a spectacle of it. So their platform is really restricted to copying us on lockdowns and mandates and a little bit on critical race theory, even though they vote the wrong way on it. And it's clear to anyone who's been paying attention that the purpose of that party was to create confusion and create this narrative amongst the establishment press that there's so many parties. I heard this. TVO did a segment yesterday. I couldn't even watch it because of the people they had on. It's just, you're just going to get the same nonsense. Martin Reg Cohn was on. And I think the headline was, why are there so many new parties? There's not so many. There's one. The New Blue Party of Ontario are running a candidate in every riding with thousands of members and donors and a party constitution. And then there's a copycat paper party, Derek Sloan's party, that's been effective in raising money because he has this huge list that the Conservative Party of Canada is letting him use after the federal leadership that he was in. And he copies a lot of our messaging, but only the messaging that the PC establishment's okay with him talking about, lockdowns and mandates. And he won't talk about the stuff we talk about, fixing the democratic process. And I think anyone who's paying attention has seen exactly what they've been up to. And there's no further evidence than just look at on the ground how many New Blue Party lawn signs are up, the enthusiasm of our volunteers and our candidates. I've been crisscrossing the province, meet and greets up to Sudbury and back. Like I said, Alexandria, Essex, and the grassroots effort will continue after June 2nd. And Derek Sloan said he doesn't know what he's going to do after June 2nd. He's leading a federal party. He's leading a provincial party. He might run for leader of the United Conservative Party of Alberta. Why not? He already ran there in Alberta once. Now there's an opening.
How does the New Blue Party stay relevant if you do not have a sitting MPP after the election?
Well, you're talking like it's already been decided. We got to get people out to vote tomorrow. The vote's not done. One of the bad thing about these establishment polls is that they create a narrative to suppress voters from showing up. And we've seen voter turnout decrease to 50-something% in recent years. And they're projecting that tomorrow might be under 50%. Can you imagine over 50% of voters not participating? And we've already had a campaign here where the establishment parties aren't saying anything. The Ontario PCs haven't even released a platform. Did you realize that? They don't have a platform released. I don't remember recent memory where an established party doesn't have a platform that they're running on. And Doug Ford's been staying away from the media, doing as few stops as possible, almost no interviews, definitely not 1 hour long interviews. And the objective is to skate through this election as fast as possible with as few people in Ontario knowing there's an election as possible, and with as few people as possible learning about the New Blue Party, because they know we need to have one-on-one conversations with 10 million people, and we're going to do that over time. And so if we keep talking about, well, what happens worst case scenario, the fear is that in a lot of close races, New Blue supporters aren't going to vote. And it's imperative that tomorrow you vote, because every vote counts. And we have to have a historic showing, and we will. And every vote that is added to that historic showing will show strength for the future. Because whether we have a few MPPs in the legislature, or we continue pushing the way we have for the last year and a half, where we had one MPP and the whole world against her, we will keep challenging the left, balancing the narrative, and change the course. And now the difference is hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in Ontario know about the New Blue Party. Hundreds of thousands hopefully will have voted for it. And we will have people on the ground in every riding, led by our riding presidents and our candidates, to build grassroots riding associations that will continue with meetings and getting together and discuss policy. And we'll get feedback, what they liked about the new blueprint, what they didn't like about the new blueprint, how we could have did things differently. And we will keep growing. But it's imperative that people vote tomorrow. Don't mail it in. Just because the media and the establishment class don't want you to vote, they want people to believe that the outcome is already decided, because the people who would skip the vote in that scenario are those that are tired of the establishment. And if over 50% stay home, that means the establishment stays in power with less than 50% deciding on it.
I want to talk about gender ideology and critical race theory. Both of those are mentioned in your platform. And there probably are people watching tonight, watching the live stream, who are undecided, or they're curious about New Blue, and maybe they consider themselves to be fiscal conservatives. They like the fact that you want to increase productivity or GDP in the province by 5%, that you want to lower hydroelectric or electricity rates, that you want to lower the provincial portion of the GST or HST by 3 cents. But then when it comes to things like critical race theory or gender ideology, maybe that's where you lose them, or maybe that's where they're buying into some legacy media narrative that you're a fringe party. What do you say to those curious voters checking you out tonight?
There's nothing fringe about what we've been saying, and the proof is not from what the establishment media has been saying. It's from those on the ground. And one thing is for sure about what's going to happen tomorrow is that we are going to learn that thousands of people who agree with what we've been talking about will have voted for another party. I know that sounds shocking, but thousands of people are going, if not hundreds of thousands, are going to vote for our values and principles and cast their vote with another party. Because most Ontarians are busy working in between elections, keeping their jobs or their small businesses going, their careers, raising their children. They're not following the ins and outs of what the establishment media likes to say, inside baseball, because they don't want to talk about it either. But then you see election time and you see the Doug Ford PCs running TV ads, Richard, attacking the NDP using the exact same rhetoric that the New Blue Party's been advocating for the last year and a half. You see the NDP criticizing Doug Ford about the ties to lobbyists, which we've been talking about since 2018. And they have the benefit of appealing to Ontarians because they're given the platform from the establishment media and because they've been around for 100 years. And then when we look at other things, other items like you're talking about, like critical race theory, gender identity theory, when Belinda voted against that critical race theory bill, Bill 67, and Rick Nichols voted in favor of it, Derek Sloan didn't talk about the vote. Other organizations like Parents is First Educators, who are out there attacking New Blue today, hoping that they can stop as many voters that follow them from voting for us as possible. They didn't talk about the vote. And the establishment press, Toronto Star, but in Waterloo Region, they call themselves a Waterloo Record, not to let anyone know that they're Toronto Star. They wrote like one line, just this one New Blue MPP voted against Bill 67, and there was an op-ed published. She's got to explain herself. So Belinda did explain herself. Number one, Bill 67 is based on the assumption that our education system is systemically racist. Number two, the solution to what they say is systemic racism in our education system, all of our schools, not just some, is that we need to classify something called subconscious racism and fine any student, teacher, or parent or anyone else in an educational setting who interrupts a proceeding on what the bureaucrats deem is subconscious racism. When you talk to people in Cambridge or across Ontario, regardless of who they voted for, if our schools are systemically racist, if we should have something called subconscious racism, and if there should be fines for expressing something called subconscious racism, it is overwhelmingly no. But the press and the establishment parties, they want to present it as something called racial equity to disguise what they're really up to. So they're actually the fringe ones when you actually talk about what's in the details of the bill. Let's keep going on that kind of topic. It's not even on social policy like you're talking about. The idea that, political parties get over $100 million in the last 10 years, the big three, PCs, Liberals, and NDP, to fund their political operations. If you did a poll of that, how many Ontarians would say, yeah, sure, take my taxpayer money and go run your political parties and hire Corey Tenake to buy a Ferrari and run TV ads and do polls? In fact, the fringe are the people that think that's a good idea, or think that an online gambling license for the Toronto Star is a good idea. But City News, they're not friends with me. And the people in the editorial room are on the phone every day with the PCs, the Liberals, and the NDP. And just like all establishment press, they don't want to put a lot of work into their stories. And it's easier if one of the establishment parties calls them and tells them what story to run. And they'll say, oh, yes, it's a fringe party. And if you watch that news clip, they didn't interview me. They, in fact, didn't even show me speaking. They didn't even show Belinda speaking towards one of the issues that they were talking about or claiming that we were talking about. I think on June 3rd, I'm going to call my lawyer and ask him if that City News ad or a news piece is a defamation. Because in my view, it entirely was defamation. And they had other people doing the talking on what we were about for us. It was a total smear job for the 30 seconds that it was in there. But the good news is we've arrived, Richard. If the establishment TV press the day before the vote wants to do a hit piece on us and a total smear job, a defamatory smear job, and have us on there with their paper party candidate in Derek Sloan to try to make us look like him, I think that means we've arrived, because someone put him up to it. And I guess they're worried how we're going to do tomorrow. And otherwise, they would have just ignored us, as they've been ignoring us for the last 30 days. So we've got to make sure we get out the vote. And today, all day in Cambridge and Kitchener-Conestoga, our team has been on the ground getting together the Get Out the Vote effort. Tomorrow, we're going to have volunteers in both ridings handing out thousands of literature pieces to remind our supporters to vote.
All right. I can't ignore the chat here, the chat room. A lot of people weighing in with mainly comments, but I did notice at least 2 or 3 people in the chat are wondering about the voting system that's in place for this provincial election. Apparently utilizing Dominion voting machines. I know that they were sort of test piloted, I believe, in a number of polls during the last provincial election, but I think they're in far greater use this time. Is that a concern for you, the Dominion voting machines?
Well, I've never liked the voting machine. I also don't prefer like online voting when they have these internal party races and they do online voting. And remember in the federal conservative leadership in 2020, the one that I would have won, but Derek Sloan teamed up with Aaron O'Toole to get me kicked out of the race twice. And the one that Leslyn Lewis almost won, but Derek Sloan and his friends at PAFE that are controlled by PC operatives kept attacking her to make sure. Wouldn't the world have been just a lot better in the last 2 years if Leslyn Lewis was the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada and not Aaron O'Toole? Anyway, but I remember on—
Is that an endorsement?
Well, no, it's not an endorsement, but she's not perfect. I think I'm better on axing the carbon tax and against international agreements like the Paris Accord. But for crying out loud, she was way better than Aaron O'Toole. But anyway, let's go. Let's look back. 2020, they're using voting machines at the Conservative leadership race. And remember, Lisa Raitt came out after doing such a terrible job running the leadership election as the chair of the LEOC, and all of a sudden, the machines were eating the ballots. You remember that?
Yes.
And they stopped for like an hour. What are these things? Like out of a Terminator movie, they eat paper? I thought they're supposed to count. So there's that. And, we never heard anything again. What happened to those ballots? I don't understand why in the Western world we need machines to count ballots. I don't get it. I'm not, but it's very, very important. And in fact, in 2018, the PCs wrote a letter to Elections Ontario concerned about the machines back when Doug Ford was pretending to be a conservative. And since then, it snuck up on us that Elections Ontario expanded the use of these machines. They're not going to be in every poll tomorrow, but I think they're going to be in half of the polls, or maybe a bit more. But they didn't give us notice that they were expanding their use. And a committee was struck, and the only people allowed on the committee to discuss with Elections Ontario were representatives from the PCs, the Liberals, and the NDP. Now, having said all that, we are going to have to advocate in future and ask the question, why do we need machines? Why can't we look at the paper ballots? But let's not confuse our election system with the U.S. election system south of the border. Because south of the border, every state and every town and every municipality has different rules depending on the jurisdiction. And that's where you get partisan operatives jumping on committees and trying to change the voting methods or the regulations leading up to a general election where, in some jurisdictions, the mail-in ballot period is longer. And the big controversial thing in the US is the use of ballot harvesting, where someone goes and picks up a bunch of ballots for other people. The good thing in Ontario is we've got one uniform process. So the process in Cambridge is not going to be different than Toronto Centre, than Sudbury, than Thunder Bay. It's all the same. The ballots are all the same. It has to reconcile at the end of the day, and we can have access to the ballots after the fact, like on June 3rd or afterwards. And we can also, we've also had the opportunity to locally to look at how the machines operate with a rerun. I don't know what it was, a rehearsal of these machines. I don't know.
But what's the point of having volunteers to go and scrutineers, for example, if there's nothing to look at? It's a machine. How do you scrutinize a voting machine?
Well, you have to make sure that the reconciliation makes up. The number of people who vote reconciles with what's there at the end. And we will have our get out the vote list and our list of supporters. And we'll get a pretty good idea of how many of them are voting and what's going on in every poll. You're right. Fundamentally, I don't like the machines because you want to be able to look at the ballot when you're counting it. But it's important that we don't confuse the issues that they have south of the border that has been written up by commentators in Canada to the fact that they have ballot harvesting there. And in every town, in every state, it's a different voting process, with here where we have a uniform process. The other thing to keep in mind is the establishment doesn't put so much effort. The establishment parties don't put as much effort in funny business on the general election because the PCs have shut down democracy inside their own party. So in the US, like imagine you're an establishment operative and you're in the Republican or the Democratic Party, and you cannot block or kick out a candidate, whether it's on the left, AOC, and she's a big communist, but I'm sure a lot of the Democrat establishment don't want her there. And on the Republican side, there's candidates that the establishment don't want, but they can't block them from running in the primaries because those are protected by law. And if you're registered with that party, you run. So now you're an establishment operative and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't stop these candidates from winning a primary. In Ontario, the establishment operatives don't have that same concern because the primary process is not protected by law. There are no constitutional rules that the parties follow anymore. They have constitutions, they just don't follow them because they get away with abuse of power because they know it's very, very hard to sue a political party and win. I, in fact, was the first private citizen, to sue a political party and win. Someone did it after me. It had not happened before 2020. And so they know they could just play fancy with the rules, kick Belinda out of caucus, kick others out of caucus. And despite the fact that the establishment political parties have rules that they have to have nominations to select their candidates, they just ignore their own rules. And in the PC party, they got rid of voter fraud. Do you know how they got rid of voter fraud? They just stopped having elections.
That's one way.
That's one way.
Talk to me about New Blue candidate Rob Stockey, who's running up in Carleton near Ottawa. He was involved in the Freedom Convoy as an organizer. And he recently announced, actually on my radio program and also on another Rebel News, that he was recently notified by the Office of the Attorney General in Ontario. They informed him by law, they have to do this, I believe within 90 days, that he was the subject of digital surveillance. He was being spied on by the Attorney General. What do you make of this?
And Rob is a hardworking member of the New Blue team, and we're really lucky to have him as a candidate. One thing before we get on to Rob, to remind everyone, Richard, that I forgot to say in your last question, we need scrutineers tomorrow. So volunteer for your New Blue candidate. If you live in the Ottawa area, look up Rob Stockey on our website, or one of the other great candidates that we have running in the Ottawa area. Whether it's Glenn Armstrong in Ottawa Centre or Kathleen Corvo or the others, reach out to them and offer to scrutineer tomorrow or in Southwestern Ontario, because that's one way to keep track of what's going on with the votes. And then I saw that interview that Rob had with David Menzies.
No, you heard it on my show.
Okay, I heard it. Sorry, Richard.
That's okay. I'm kidding.
I actually haven't even seen the full details of it. But from what I've been told, it's I couldn't believe it when I saw the letter. I couldn't believe that. I guess to just fill everyone in, when the trucker convoy happened, I went with two of the New Blue team members the first weekend, the Friday. No, we got there Thursday, actually. And it was obviously in the winter. And I had just started getting back on both feet after a long battle in 2021 where I had 3 surgeries with my leg and getting strength back in my leg. So it was, it was a bit of an adventure in terms of managing the cold and the snowy ground and the slippery ground. And there were a lot of people, only because of the health condition I was bouncing back from. And Rob was there, and he did an amazing job helping our team, because on that first day, on the Friday, there were so many people downtown having a good time, being peaceful, but there was no setup on a mic and speakers. And our team worked with Rob. We were able to rent a mic and speakers, and we found a flatbed, and we put it up, New Blue Party, mic and speakers. Ezra Levant got to speak. I got to speak. Rob got to speak. And without that work on the Friday, Saturday, there probably wouldn't have been an opportunity for the people there to hear from important speakers. And then eventually they got other equipment, and we had to leave after that weekend. I don't know what they would have been tapping Rob's phone for renting a mic and speakers. I didn't know that was something nefarious. Is it because he was hanging out with the leader of the New Blue Party, or because he was going to be? I think I went on the stage, the trucker convoy, when Rob introduced me, and I said, wouldn't he be a great New Blue candidate? And we're really lucky to have him as a New Blue candidate. And he's a guy that knows a lot, and he's a very good guy. And I can't believe that that would have happened. And Rob's also a humble guy, so you won't see him doing press conferences, standing up and saying, I am a key leader of the trucker convoy. Because Rob knows, like the New Blue Party candidates know, that me and Belinda and all the candidates, we're not the leaders of a movement. We are the ones that have been lucky enough to be put in a position where we can be the spokespeople for our supporters and our members and our donors. And Rob's a very humble guy, and I couldn't believe that he got that letter. And good for him for raising awareness to it, because a lot of what the New Blue Party's been doing, whether it's regarding the trucker convoy or fiscal or social policy, is raising awareness to things that the establishment parties and the establishment press don't want us to talk about.
A number of people in the live chat are asking about the World Economic Forum. And I know this is an international organization. It has, they brag about having influence in federal cabinets and so forth around the world. And you're running a provincial party, but for some reason, people want you to weigh in and talk about the World Economic Forum and your concerns or your thoughts.
Yes, and the reason why is because a lot of those who have been trying to copy us in provincial politics, they talk about the World Economic Forum in order to not talk about Bill 67, or the fact that Rick Nichols voted in favor of Bill 67, or to not talk about the fact that the political parties are getting taxpayer money to run their operations, or to not talk about the fact that voting machines are being used, or not talk about the fact that in Waterloo Region and other municipalities, did you hear this one? They've banned political party election signs from regional roads in Waterloo Region, and they are calling it the rule of law, when in fact, if you look at decisions from the Supreme Court of Canada, it is illegal to create outright bans against political party lawn signs. These are all examples of anti-democratic ideas, often founded at these international forums and international conferences, and they seep their way into provincial and municipal politics. So yeah, we can talk about, in every email I do, in any interview I do, I can talk about how I am against politicians in Canada going to the WEF or WHO, signing treaties and coming back here and telling local and provincial politicians, Justin Trudeau signed this overseas, we need to agree with it. But you know who the first guy is to stand up to these in a long time was me in 2017. The basic founding principle of the Axe the Carbon Tax campaign was on the idea that Justin Trudeau shouldn't be going overseas and signing the Paris Accord, which was the new Kyoto Accord, and coming back to Canada and telling provinces and mayors and city councils and provincial politicians that you have to follow this international treaty agreed upon by a bunch of people who are accountable to no one. And the principle remains the same, whether it's on a carbon tax, on health policy. We have always opposed, or rather I should say, we have always supported local politics, because all politics is local, and the decisions that local and provincial politicians make should be accountable to their voters and their taxpayers. They should not be accountable to international treaties. So my concern is who in Ontario at the provincial or municipal level is pushing as a politician the same ideas based on international treaties and bringing them in through regulation or through laws with very little notice or very little awareness being raised, that are exactly based on the principles from international conferences, but they're not labeling as that. They're not saying I went to Davos and I came back with this great idea. So whether the person went to Davos or not, we have to look at the idea and what are they bringing in and what are they pushing. And we're a provincial party, and we're going to focus on provincial and municipal issues and raise awareness to the ideas, whether the person's gone to Davos or not, whether the person's in the WEF or not. So if you follow my history, it's been very, very clear where I stand on international bodies like the WHF, like the WHO, like Paris Agreement, for example, being signed, and then Justin Trudeau or any politician coming back and saying to premiers and mayors and city councillors and MPPs, this is what we're adopting. I'm against that because it's upside down. That's not what democracy is. I believe in grassroots democracy and being accountable to your voters and the taxpayers in your constituency.
You and Belinda spent a great deal of time and energy trying to change the Progressive Conservative Party from the inside. And now here you are starting a new party, which has proven to be more difficult, starting a new party, breaking through, or trying to change an existing establishment party from the inside?
Well, working from the inside, and I have to apologize when I go to meet and greets or anyone watching who may have spent a membership on the Ontario PC Party, because we thought we were going to work from the inside and make a difference. I'm sorry that you spent your money on it. But it's like, obviously, like banging your head against the wall. Because when you work from the inside, you think that there are a set of rules and the votes are going to be counted. And there's not going to be a basic set of values and principles that we all agree on. The elections will be determined by free and fair votes. There won't be retribution for a political opinion, and you won't have to be worried about someone spying on what you're saying. But when you're working from the inside, you can do that. You can work from the inside on the Ontario PC Party as long as you always lose. They're fine with that. When you make an impact or start to grow your support base and can win, that's not allowed. I can tell you that I feel stronger and better than I ever have in the 17 years that I've been involved in politics, because what we are doing now, we are doing it on the shoulders of our supporters and our members and our donors that push us forward, and our candidates and our riding presidents. And it is so refreshing, not just for me or Belinda, but for our board, for riding leaders on the ground. They feel refreshed and they feel hopeful that they are no longer constrained by the nefarious actions of these hacks in the Ontario PC Party or other establishment parties that are sabotaging or doing worse, issuing retribution when you are inside, for example, and working from the inside. So there's more hope and more. People ask me when I'm going to the meet and greets, are you tired? How can I be tired when every time we go to a meet and greet, people are so thankful and hopeful, and they come out and they say, I haven't voted in years. Thank you so much for doing this. Or I used to vote Green. I used to vote NDP. I used to vote Liberal, and I didn't realize that they don't stand up for my values and principles. Or I voted for PC in the past, and I realized that they're just frauds. And that's encouraging. That's motivating, rather than having to deal with a corrupt system on the inside. And we talked about that city newsreel earlier. That professor, who is so smart and educated in politics, he didn't bother talking about how establishment party politics works in Ontario. They don't care about the voter fraud in the system. They don't care about the retribution issued to you if you're not doing what the lobbyists say. They skip all over that. And if you stick with that mindset of working from the inside, that can be a scenario where you lose all hope. But having found the New Blue Party of Ontario, we are trying to give people hope that there's another way and a better way, because the best is yet to come.
So the establishment parties, as you say, they have this brand recognition. They're tapped into the machine. They have the legacy media behind them. They have all of these institutions and the system behind them. How do you, as a new party, break on through, break into that, I don't know, inner circle, and get the machine behind you the next time?
Well, we don't want to be part of the machine. That's for sure.
Well, I mean, what I mean by the machine is the institutions, the media, that can push a party further along, so that you get the the sort of the mass recognition that these parties have benefited from for 100 years in some cases.
And so it ties nicely into your last question, right? Which one's more challenging? Because in an internal party race, it's impossible because they rig it or they just clamp down on democracy. When you're starting a new party, but the benefits of an internal party race is when you're running in a convention, everyone who's voting is there, right? If there's 2,000 people, 5,000 people, theoretically, it's a number where you can speak to every single delegate. In a nomination, the same thing. In a leadership, it's a little harder, but there's still numbers that are scalable. When you're starting a new party and you're running against the existing brand, it's extremely challenging because there are over 10 million voters in Ontario, millions of people. And many, many, many of them, my grandmother didn't speak any English. She knew exactly what PC and Liberal and NDP was. And millions of people in Ontario vote based on what their parents, grandparents, or 2 or 3 generations before them were doing. And they have an inherent trust. They might, but the majority of Ontarians clearly believe Doug Ford is incapable of doing the job. And the majority of Ontarians probably don't believe he's up to too much good in what he's doing. But they have this inherent trust in the PC brand and the Liberal brand, the NDP, that even though there might be some of the politicians that don't know what they're doing, that somewhere in their infrastructure are people who know what they're doing. And if they only knew the underhandedness that I'd seen and the fact that those individuals are not making the best decisions for Ontarians, they probably would have a different perspective on it. So how do you break these long-standing habits is what we're talking about, right? That's the challenge here. We are not going to be the party that blames Ontarians, whatever our result is tomorrow. We're not going to be that party. And I certainly hope none of our candidates are going to be saying any of that tomorrow or in the future. And especially when you see those who follow politics closely and we're supporting the trucker convoy, we're against the mandates, we're against Doug Ford's fiscal and social policy, and they're giving him another chance, Richard. These are the people on social media who criticize the 10 million Ontarians for being uninformed. They've got all the information and they're voting for him again. So who's really at fault? But I'm not done. Are we going to something else?
Oh, yeah, we got about 2 minutes here. I'm just getting you the NFL 2-minute warning.
Well, I've got to just say one thing.
Right.
The way to make change on a grassroots level, there's only one way. Talk to every single voter one by one. One by one, not TV ads. They make a little bit of an impression, but not much. It would have helped if the establishment media led us into the leadership debate. It would have helped if Derek Sloan didn't do what he was doing. But we will continue the grassroots effort in building riding associations in every riding and talking to every single Ontarian, because we have to earn their trust and earn their trust that the New Blue Party is going to be around for a long time and we're capable and up to the task of leading this province.
All right. I wanted to get this question in here, and that is, for a lot of people, the federal election was about one issue: freedom. Do you think there's one issue that's driving this provincial election? What's the one issue if you had to pick one?
I'm not into those type of paradigms, because that's usually establishment media trying to say one issue, or they're trying to say, it's the narrative they push on us, one issue, or there's one vote, right? And don't split the vote because it's a pie and we can cut the vote in different slices. There are voters, and there are over 10 million of them, and every single voter, they have their own issue or issues as to what matters. And synthesizing it down to one issue is something that, makes good for a 30-second news clip, but is really not giving justice to what's really going on out there. But if I were to try to synthesize what's going on out there, we have seen in the last 30 days, Ontarians not happy with their establishment parties, not enthused or encouraged by what they've seen with their options. And everyone is saying that this election's been a snooze fest, that Doug Ford and the PCs haven't even released a campaign platform. Doug Ford's hiding. And in history, we're going to look back at this election as the one where we ran out of time for all 10 million people to know about the New Blue Party of Ontario, but we set the foundation for what's to come, and the best is yet to come going forward. That's how they're going to look at this election campaign. We've set up the groundwork, and it starts on June 3rd.
One final question. I know I'm over. Very curious to know. Last Saturday, I saw the piece in the National Post from a column from Conrad Black. What do you suppose led this venerable columnist, former member of the House of Lords, to write a piece about the New Blue Party?
Well, you're giving me only 2 minutes, but it was a great piece. He was honest in saying that he's friends with Doug Ford and Caroline Mulroney and others in the PC party, but he had noticed the New Blue Party and the new blueprint, and he was honest in saying the PCs have gone as far left as any, and he's a great mind on history, amongst other things. And I'd never met him before, but I had the opportunity to speak to him briefly. And he was honest in saying that the PCs have moved so far to the left, he can't even remember the last time the Ontario PC Party had moved too far to the left. And it's good that the New Blue Party has started the work of making sure that common sense fiscal and social policies do not lose traction in our political discourse in Ontario. So it's quite telling, Richard, when even the friends of Doug Ford can't even pretend or ignore it anymore, because there was nothing forcing Conrad Black to write that piece. And we were happy that it caught the attention of those who traditionally, wouldn't have supported us because they have friends in other parties. And on an intellectual level and the importance of policy and values and principles, we were happy to have that mention in Conrad's article. And it's hard to ignore how bad and how far left the Ford PCs are, and the fact that the Ontario PC Party has transformed fully into a wing provincially of the Liberal Party of Canada, led by Justin Trudeau.
Jim, I'm going to just turn it over to you and get you or allow you some time to speak about whatever that I haven't asked you about tonight that you think is important.
Of utmost importance, we are down to the last evening before the vote on June 2nd. And it's not the end, because it's our first of many election campaigns and election days. And, you had some of the questions, Richard, from the chat. It's already predetermined, I'm sure people are thinking, or it's the results already set, but you must vote tomorrow. And I hope we can earn your vote, the New Blue Party of Ontario, but people can't skip the vote because it's not already determined. And in many, many ridings, it comes down to a get out the vote effort. And I know Belinda's been working hard today with their team in Cambridge and our team in Kitchener-Conestoga and other candidates across Ontario. You can also continue to campaign tomorrow, not at the voting station, but door to door or main streeting or putting up signs. And so if you want to commit the day tomorrow and you're locally here and you want to help Belinda for re-election and retaining her seat, or another candidate across Ontario, please do so. But do not skip the vote, because we cannot be the party that blames the rest of Ontario. We have to be the party that says it's within our power to grow. It's within our power to make a difference, to initiate grassroots change, to challenge the left, to change the narrative. And that was what's going to change the course going forward. But it does not happen if we skip votes because of voting machines or because we believe what the establishment press says. Those things are all a distraction. The only thing that will determine our future in Ontario and the New Blue Party are the people in Ontario. It's not international institutions. And at the end of the day, I will go back to basic principles. All politics is local. All politics. The pushback is always local. It starts in local meetings, 3, 4, 5 people. It grows. It grows from town to community to ridings, and then on a provincial level. And we have started, but please vote tomorrow. Do not skip the vote. We've worked so hard, and we will keep pushing forward and keep moving forward, because the people that have supported us for the last few years and everything we faced have stuck with us and stuck behind us. And we will continue to stick with them, Richard.
Jim, thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Richard, for hosting this election eve on our first election campaign. The best is yet to come.
Jim Karahalios, leader of the New Blue Party of Ontario. Thank you all for watching. And I'm sorry we didn't get to a lot of your questions in the comment. There was so many in the live stream, but thank you for your comments. I was tracking them and watching them. A lot of great questions and comments in there. And I hope you enjoyed tonight's Election Eve special. So get out tomorrow and vote. I'm Richard Syrett. Thank you so much.